My name is Max Igan from thecrowhouse.com. This time is so important in what's happening to humanity. I think we've been given a choice. We can go in either one of two directions, and we really have to put down the fear and realise that the choice is ours to make. A lot of people aren't seeing that. They're waiting to be saved, and I think that's a big problem. People have to realise what's happening and embrace it themselves. I think a lot of what we're seeing here, humanity is right on a cusp at the moment. We really could go in either direction. You know, with all the technology that's coming online, it's all very well to think that, well, this can just free us, but unfortunately people's hubris may get them into a little bit of trouble, because you've got to take into account the fact that the world is run by criminals who simply don't want to free us, and that is currently who's in control of a lot of the technology. So it's time for people to really step up to the plate with this and realise that we have to start embracing this ourselves, and we have to be the ones that are pushing in the direction that we want.
And what about, like you mentioned technology now, the blockchain is a real game changer.
Well, the blockchain could be a game changer depending on how we play it, because people's hubris, again, may be what gets them in trouble with this. You know, when we go to the blockchain and we start to automate everything, which is what seems to be happening, everything's becoming automated, you know, we're in danger of trading one type of government for a new type of government, which will simply be an AI government. And if that government is run by artificial intelligence, and it's really going to depend on how that operates. You know, there's new systems coming in, which I intend to talk about in my talk today, like a social crediting system that is coming online. It's already online in China, whereby they will penalise what you can and cannot buy depending on what your political views are. You know, in that sort of a situation, it doesn't matter how much money you may have on the blockchain or in Bitcoin, if you can't spend it on things because your person is simply denied certain services due to your political views, due to a social crediting system, which is what governs purchases, not necessarily the accumulation of wealth, but what governs purchases of airline tickets and things like this, then that's a danger that we've got to take into account as well. So again, it's going to depend on how we play it. The blockchain could be good, but we've got to look at how those who are currently in control of things wish to play this, and what moves they're making to control the blockchain. Not, again, by controlling the blockchain, but by controlling what you can and cannot purchase due to your political views.
Wow, that kind of threw me off, because I never really thought of it that way. I just kind of saw it as a means to, you know, get less government and things like. You see it as possibly the opposite.
Well, it could be a means of getting less government, or it could be a means of simply handing over to a new form of government. You know, what we have to understand is that by putting artificial intelligence in control of what we do, essentially we remove any accountability from the chain, because at the moment, as corrupt as our system is, there are still mechanisms in place which could be used to hold politicians accountable and to change the direction that we're going. A lot of people are too extremist in their view of this. They're not prepared to use elements within the system to change the system from within. And I think we're in a really important window right now where we can do that, and we could prevent this entire type of social crediting system coming online. But if in everything we're doing, we're failing to factor into the equation the reality that this world is run by criminals who are going to attempt to change everything that you do and co-opt it and find a means of controlling it. If we fail to factor that in and allow just our hubris to lead us in this direction and think we've got the blockchain, we're free without doing anything else, then we're going to be led into a little corral. I really think we've got to look at this direction and look at what we need to do at this point. Because by handing it all over to AI, you essentially remove any accountability from the equation. And when it becomes a situation like I heard Ron Paul talking last night about it, it's all about not doing harm to people. Well, what constitutes doing harm to people? In this politically correct society that we're coming on, if I don't call you by your chosen pronoun, this is constituting doing harm to people. You know, this is the sort of thing that we've got to look at. When all of that stuff is factored into the algorithm which is running us, and that algorithm is controlled by AI, it's what that AI considers harm to be. And if it's politically correctness that's programmed in there, then we're going to be heading for a very, very dangerous place where it's simply impossible to think outside of the box and still maintain your purchase power. That's the way they want it, you know. And in that situation, anybody who dissents against the system will simply be removed of purchase power and will be forced into a situation where they become an undesirable. because in the smart system that's coming, there will only be two types of people, desirables and undesirables. And the undesirables will be those who do harm according to what the algorithm dictates harm is. So, we've really got to look at how we're being led with all this.
Overall, what's your gut feeling? What's the world going to look like in 10 years from now?
Anybody's question. What the world is going to look like from now is really anybody's question in 10 years from now. Again, it's going to be depend on the initiatives we take and whether we choose to really get out on the front line and remain active in this real world, not just allow this digital world to lead us into what we believe digital freedom will be. We've got to pay attention to what's happening, and we cannot allow ourselves to simply hand control of our lives over to AI without us maintaining control of the system. We've got to get a situation where people are back in control of the system. We don't want government at all. We want an anarchistic type of society, but we need to educate people into how to do that and what's happening. Because an anarchistic type of society is not a society that is dictated by artificial intelligence. It's not a society that's dictated by any type of intelligence that is not my own. And that should be that way for everybody. So what the world's going to look like in 10 years, it's going to depend on what initiative we choose to take and whether we choose to stand up for ourselves in the real world and see the possibilities of where this technology could take us, or where the possibilities of where this technology could be used to lead us to. There are still two possibilities here. So we can't allow ourselves to be led through any of this, and we always need to maintain our objectivity and not allow hubris to dictate our actions. That will determine on where we're going to be in 10 years. But I can't really predict at this point. It depends on how much people are willing to really participate in making some change on the ground. Like in the future that's coming, it's really important to continue to embrace the old ways and to not ignore the old ways. If you really look at how consciousness progresses, if you look at how life progresses in everything, all forms of life, all the plant life around us, everything follows Fibonacci sequence. And if you look at Fibonacci sequence, how that works, phi ratio, all this sort of stuff, getting into spiritual, esoteric stuff here, but if you look at how it works, how Fibonacci sequence works, it's a number sequence which, it uses the past number and marries it with the present number to create the future. So essentially you get the present and you marry it with the past to create a viable future. That's how all life progresses, and that's also how consciousness progresses. In this situation we've got now, we're in a great deal of danger of simply embracing the technological way and leaving the past behind. We need to find a way of marrying these two things together. That's what will create a viable future. There's so much knowledge that is there in the past which is in danger of being lost. And even the way everything's being digitized, think about it, we're losing our libraries, we're losing a lot of life skills. I asked the question to someone the other day, if you were arrested by the police, heaven forbid that you ever are, but if you're arrested and you were taken back to the holding cells and they told you could have your one phone call, would you even know a number to ring? Do you know the number of your wife or your husband or anything like that? Because you don't dial it anymore, your phone does it for you. We're losing these type of basic life skills. And that's not even that far in the past. But there's a lot of stuff in the past that we could use to complement what's happening in the future and take control of our lives. Use this technology to take control of our lives. The great danger is that people need to be led to safety. People's need to be saved. And a lot of people in this movement unfortunately believe that technology is going to save them without them having to participate in life and without them having to bring those old skills back into use and marry it all together. And that's what we need to do. That's how we create a viable future. So it's important that people do this. If we can do that, we've got a great way out here. But we're at an absolutely pivotal fork in the road right now, and it's going to depend on what we can do to motivate human consciousness into bringing about some real change themselves by participating themselves.